Hello. And welcome back to Unexpected History. It's like regular history, just unexpected. Today, we're looking at a scientist whose work over nearly 50 years contributed greatly to successful and life-saving organ transplant surgery. Unfortunately, he's best known for a bizarre and disturbing experiment that makes the fictional Victor Frankenstein's experiments look relatively sane. But first, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. I introduce to you a true, mad scientist, Vladimir Demikhov. Vladimir Demikhov was born in July 1918 to a peasant family living on a small farm in the Russian Volgograd region. After his father died in the Russian Civil War, Vladimir's mother, Domnica Alexandrovna, raised him and his brother and sister quite successfully, despite the hardships inherent in Soviet Russia. He and his siblings received an excellent education. As a teenager, Vladimir developed a fascination with the mammalian circulatory system, and was also inspired by Ivan Pavlov and his now famous experiments with dogs. In 1931, after finishing whatever the Soviets called their equivalent of high school, Vladimir worked as a repairman and mechanic at Stalingrad's tractor plant before going on to study at Voronezh State University in 1934. While studying at Voronezh, Vladimir creates the world's first artificial heart in 1937. Implanted into a dog, the unfortunate animal survived for only about 2 hours after the operation. He then transferred to the Moscow State University's Faculty of Biology, where he graduated with honors in 1940. His civilian life was interrupted in 1941, when he was conscripted into the Red Army, serving on the front lines as a pathologist and forensic expert during World War II. When the Soviet Union declared war on Japan in 1945, he also served in China for a time. When the war was over, Vladimir returned home with a number of medals and military decorations, and resumed his work at Moscow State University. He married in 1946, and in 1947, the same year the couple's daughter was born, he moved to Moscow's Institute of Surgery, where he experimented with liver and kidney transplants. He continued his pioneering work in the fledgling field of organ transplantation through the 1950s, with many notable firsts, including the first heart transplant, first lung transplant, first combination heart and lung transplant, and the first heart transplant with the heart being placed in the proper position. The survival rates for the latter grew exponentially over the ensuing years, from a few hours to a few weeks, with one dog living for a stunning 7 years after a successful heart transplant. It's worth noting that all his experiments involved warm-blooded, non-human mammals. Vladimir Demikhov undoubtedly made great strides in the then-emerging field of organ transplantation, often referred to as the father of the field. But even having lived behind the draconian information restrictions of the Iron Curtain, he is best known for a series of absolutely bizarre experiments, again with dogs, in which he transplanted one dog's head onto the body of another. The problem, which most people rightfully found hideously unethical, was that the host dog still had its own perfectly functional head. In 1954, Vladimir grafted a puppy's head, shoulders, and front legs onto another dog, using the vascular connections leading to the host dog's heart. Widely condemned by his peers in the Soviet Union, he paid little mind to his critics, and continued with this experimentation, although none of the unfortunate animals lived more than a month. The main issue was tissue rejection, which was little understood at the time, although some doctors were beginning to become aware of it. By the time surgeons outside the Soviet Union became aware of his experiments in 1959, he had already performed the head transplant several times over 5 years. He was roundly criticized around the world, but by the time he ended the experiments, almost 24 had been created. In 1960, Vladimir joined the Sklifosovsky Institute of Emergency Medicine, wrote a monograph titled Experimental Transplantation of Vital Organs, and coined the term transplantaology, with which he described the emerging field of organ transplantation. The monograph, which earned him a doctoral degree, was the only monograph on the subject for a not inconsiderable time. His lifelong main goal was to make organ transplants for humans a routine surgical practice. Although he initially met with an enormous degree of skepticism, he calmly fielded all of his critics' questions, succinctly and directly. He often showed other medical professionals around his lab, walking them through his experiments, and eagerly explaining his ideas and findings. After being initially rebuffed by American surgeons when they started visiting Russia to observe Soviet surgeons at work in 1960, no more than 2 years later, his ideas started gaining followers in the American medical community, as they gradually warmed up to organ transplantation for humans. Kriston Barnard, the South African surgeon who would later perform the world's first human heart transplant in 1967, was a great admirer of Vladimir Demikhov, twice visiting the Russian's lab in 1960 and 63. Barnard later said Demikov's earlier experiments made the heart transplant possible, calling him the father of heart and lung transplantation. Vladimir Demakov retired in 1986, and passed away as a result of an aneurysm in November 1998, at age 82. Again, it is worth pointing out that Demikov's experiments, while eventually proving beneficial to humanity, didn't involve humans whatsoever, and he often doesn't receive the recognition for his early contributions to the field of organ transplantation in general, and coronary surgery in particular. This is my own conjecture, but I would surmise much of that lack of recognition can most likely be traced back to the two-headed dog experiments. Well, that's all for today's video. Whatever your thoughts about his two-headed dog experiments, and I personally find them disturbing and deplorable, Vladimir Demikov's contributions to the field of human organ transplantation were considerable, and worthy of recognition, even if he loses respect for the dog experiments. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support what we do, you can go to our Patreon page for monthly subscription offers with all kinds of benefits. If a monthly subscription isn't your thing, you can always make a one-time donation through our Buy Me a Coffee page for as little as $3. We also have merch for sale. All links will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.